back, Agent Academy. Today we have Stephen Lewis. We merged resources together probably in the spring at some point, April, May. And there was a lot that Stephen brought to the table that my business was missing. I think there was, fortunately enough, that we were able to bring to the business to help Stephen's business. And so far, I feel like we've really developed a lot of new things that are really helping the agent experience. But I want to go back to, Stephen, when you started kind of your first year, because we glance over that, but you had massive success. You're one of the only agents that I know that went platinum within, your first 18 months or 24, maybe it was the first 12 months. So if you don't mind, just give us a brief background on Stephen. Who is he? How did it happen?
Definitely. And I want to start off by saying thank you, Brett, for having me here today. And I love that we've merged resources. And with your knowledge, my knowledge, I think partnering up has really helped us collaborate collectively. And part of my success as a brand new agent was the fact that I was kind of figuring it out on my own, right? And you started in the business, I think, with mortgages, where you were just dialing, and that's how we were taught, right? I came from a brokerage where they just taught us to dial, and we didn't know anything else other than dialing. And within my first 9 months, I was coined the internet king with just online lead generation, and they gave us a book. Back then we were just Rolodexing it, and my first listing was a mistake dial that landed me a $1.2 million listing. I had no clue how to go on the listing appointment. My broker at the time actually came with me. We ended up getting the listing. It was featured on the Wall Street Journal, and at the time I was like, holy cow, a listing on the paper. So from there, it gave me that I wanted that momentum to continue, but I was also lost. So you don't know what you know in that business. And it was just a matter of just digging in, showing up at the office every single day, plugging into what you hear in your surroundings. And ultimately, that's really what led me to my success. And part of the systems that we created today is what are things that agents aren't plugging into, what they're not doing, and how do we make that massively available to everybody else?
Right. And that too, that for me is, as we're coming on, despite, the company of our size that we've created, a lot of our trainings we recreate, we redo every week. And you have always been really good at documenting the training, documenting the SOP, and having that built out so that you can point back to it and the new agent can go watch that video. So we're kind of pulling on each other for that, and I'm definitely using you in that way right now. But again, at the end of the day, we're able to take an agent, like a Kim Roman who's already sold 18 homes, and we're helping show her how to get to 36 homes, and Jamie Kiefler, and there's a lot of good people that have come through the organization as a result of you directly. But I think where you spent a good amount of time, and I can confidently say nobody has a transaction management avenue like we do, or listing coordinating. And you've always been really particular about the way that things are done, but you get upset if they're not done that way. And it's not that difficult to do them that way.
Yep.
Like, you'll take the time to help somebody actually build out exactly how you feel something should be done. And now this is, $20+ million, $27, $30 million producer with a decent amount of buyer sales in there doing transactions. So you need efficiency and you need the checklists to be run. So, with that, I'm already seeing it as we have JJ incorporating the system that you built and created with Open to Close and running that play. The agents are having a completely different experience with transaction management, which then frees up their time to go back out and sell more homes. So what were some of your pain points with that? What kind of created this, as Jen Schiff would say, the craziest checklist she's ever seen in the world of transaction management?
Definitely. And I was always taught, I'm sure you heard this before, if you encounter a problem, I want to make sure that we never encounter that same problem ever again.
Right.
And with your years in the business, with my years in the business, we've probably seen countless transactions blow up at the end, home inspection issues, appraisal issues. And that was one of the really key factors that I was taught. Our hardest work is getting the offer accepted. And once we got the offer accepted, at the end of the day, how I looked at it was I just wanted to coast to the finish line. And when I knew that an issue happened during home inspection or appraisal or the day of closing, I was like, I have to do the work all over again. And if those things could be avoidable, how do we make sure we built the system around that? So the reason why it's coined the craziest checklist of all is because we've pretty much encountered every single problem that could ever happen in a transaction, and we want to be ahead of the problem, right? And making sure that from a buyer's agent perspective, if we're representing the landlord or the seller, we have JJ, our transaction team, actually reaching out now on behalf of the seller's agent and saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer agent, how did the inspection go? We want to help preface to our seller if there's any problems before it even happens. Why wait for the inspection report? The inspection report's 3-5 days long.
Right.
Let's get ahead of it so we can start behind the scenes. And I think that's the goal. The goal is to make sure that we're getting to the finish line as smoothly and as quickly as possible, because our end goal is just making sure we're working for our client, getting that raving review.
Right.
So and I think that's the thing. The mindset that I had was making sure that my profile on Zillow, on Google, all of those Yelp, was stellar. And if I felt like at the end of the transaction, I could not get a stellar review, how can I improve and fix it?
Right.
And that's ultimately what led to these checklists. So back from my early days where I was just pounding the phones, dialing, I had the same mentality of just transaction. And early on in my days, as bad as it is to say, I was more transaction focused than I was relationship focused.
Right.
So on one hand, it was bad. On the other hand, it gave me more time out there in the field, so to speak.
Yep.
Transaction after transaction, when the average agent, like you mentioned a few weeks ago, the average agent does what? 4, 5, 6 transactions, maybe a year. The average agent, I was closing 60, 70, 80 transactions a year in my first 24, 36 months.
Right.
So that gave me so much more exposure in the market to figure out, that went wrong.
Right.
Let's never have that happen ever again.
Yeah. And it's funny too, when we talk about transaction management or listing management, a lot of the problems that are going to come up are very similar. So it's like staying ahead of those, exactly what you mentioned with the home inspection. We were talking to, and I ran a transaction recently to kind of test out the JJ system that you had built. And I remember calling you, like, hey, some feedback. The listing agent's reaching out to me quite a bit throughout the process. How do we get JJ more involved? And you're like, I always do a three-way text message with them so they know, hey, reach out to JJ. And from there, JJ then sent it out after that. We're talking about adding it as a checklist. Should JJ send it? Should we send it? How do we have it as a part of the system? And it was funny. Then I was down at Dan Spitz's wedding in Cabo, swimming in a pool, not near my phone. She texted me first, independently, about something that was not. It was scheduling with the sellers about something. I didn't respond for 2 hours. And then I checked my phone, and 2 hours later, she texted the thread with JJ on it. JJ got an answer in like 10 minutes for her. And that's really what we want. We want to train the other agent, train the other party. When I'm an agent, transacting, or if JJ's transacting and he sees a listing coordinator or some transaction coordinator, they know to go to that person because you're going to get an answer a lot quicker. And it's tough to get the agents to do that sometimes, but you have to continue to retrain them throughout the transaction,
100%.
and retrain.
And I want to just say, actually, I learned that tactic from you, right? And before we, collaborated together, I always leaned on you as, my mentor. And I looked at you in the business of, hey, Brett, what would you do here? And you're like, you know what? That's not my department. And I took that and I implemented that into my business. And my analogy is just, if you ever bought a car, right? The car salesperson takes you out on the road, goes over the specs. But once you agree on purchasing that car, they do the negotiation, and once you finalize on that price, where do they walk you to? The finance department. And the finance department is not the car salesperson. So that was my mentality when building out these systems, that as a salesperson, I need a system that my finance person, my transaction coordinator, can come in here and then take that transaction, now that the salesperson did their job, finalize that sale all the way through closing without minimal, touch points from the agent. And I think at the end of the day, for a lot of the agents that are joining our organization that have the experience of being a solo agent, the benefit of them plugging into our system is that they at least know the background and the fundamentals. Now we can explode, double, triple their business because of the systems and the staff that we have that know how to get them to an offer accepted, whether you're on a seller side or a buyer side, all the way to closing. And some of our systems, I've been a witness to this for the last 3 weeks now. Some of our tasks that are popping up are things that agents didn't even know that existed. They're like, that saved me a lot of time. And that's the the benefits that I feel like, a lot of agents are not seeing yet.
Yeah.
That until they get to experience it like firsthand yourself, we just have to train the agents because they've been so in tune with just maybe sometimes being a solo agent. And a lot of the newer agents that we're bringing on, these systems, these processes are gold.
Yeah.
They really are.
Well, we've even said that too, where let's say there's a late 50s, somebody who's been a realtor for a number of years and has always done things their way, and they're an individual agent, and let's say they're at Sotheby's on a 70-30 split with a 6% royalty. It's like, hey, come into our world at a 65-35 doing your $15 million a year and try a transaction. Just feel that. You don't even need leads. You don't need coaching. You don't need anything. Just experience how much that's going to save you time-wise in your business if you trust the process and how built out it is. And it's one of those things where it's like, we'll give you a free deal. We'll give you free transaction management. You stay at Sotheby's. Just try it. I guarantee you're going to like it a heck of a lot more. And that's the problem that people are coming into when it comes to scaling an organization. It's the transaction management aspect of things. They're not going to take the time or think about building out the system in the way that you did it with JJ. They're not going to take the time to train a person in the right way to run the system, which JJ has a great background and then was willing to really work close with you. I think he was running 80 files a month with Ribbon. And it's like a lot of people will hire a VA, they'll hire somebody at 45 grand a year, they'll bring in the wrong people, and then they won't train them properly, they won't have the right system, and then they'll go do it again in 12 months, and then they'll go do it again. And that's how they get stuck in this rat race of never having something perfected. And I feel like where we really differ is we're geeking out on the process to make sure that nobody has this.
Right.
This is our, I don't want to say crack or heroin, that's a negative. But this is our opposite of kryptonite,
Yeah.
This lures you in. So I had a Zoom with JJ and Darren on with the COO of Open to Close, which I'll send you the recording to. But one of the cool things that he broke out on that is he's talking about opening a transaction management company. And I was asking him how he would have that structured if he were to do so. And he was breaking down piece by piece where in-house would land, where VAs would land, what his whole system would look like so that one person could essentially run 200 files, pending files at a time.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool to hear that where that's going. And that's kind of, that's the exciting piece of that. There's technology that exists. There's time that has to be spent in building out the systems and stuff like that people aren't willing to do. There's the checklist. There's the trial, the experience around that, where a lot of people that are techie or can sit in an ops setting are not actually doing a ton of deals like you are at a high volume and can't go in there and actually audit it from the agent experience. And it's one of those things where we can confidently say, hey, if it can keep Stephen Lewis happy, it should really keep you happy.
Right.
And we're already getting very positive feedback.
That's awesome. No, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. So what you tell us a little, as we wrap up, we got another 5 minutes or so, where are, some of your goals? Where are you looking to go?
Honestly, I've been really excited the last few months just working alongside you and providing the staff and the resources at pretty much my disposal to fool around with, I would say. And I like breaking things. And you use that term quite often, geeking out. And I've really embraced that, right? It's with the technology that we have in our day and age, with the number of transactions and the volume count that the team is producing, it kind of really allows us to trial and error. So every single time I'm monitoring these files on the back end, and I screenshot, I circle, and then I send it to JJ and I say, hey, how do we fix this? How do we make this better than the next time? And that's what I really enjoy doing. I'm more of that perfectionist, and my coach says that's not a good thing to be. But I really embrace that because it allows us to continue to be better and do better. And at the end of the day, our end client, our end user is our clients, right? Yeah. So I look at us as more of the middleman to make sure that we're giving that 5-star stellar experience to our client. And that's my aspiration and my goal is if someone else, the reason I got into real estate is to make sure that person is achieving the American dream, right? Yep. That was the ultimate goal. So now it's how do I one step further that and say, hey, now that if it's a seller, we've accomplished the American dream of owning a home. Now we're selling it. Let's give them the flip side of that service and make it stellar. And if we're not at that level, right? I look at us as an A+ team. And if we're not playing at an A level, how do we make sure that we're constantly improving? And look, systems aren't going to be perfect. But what I think about our collaboration is the fact that we can constantly improve and we're not staying stagnant.
Yeah, no, totally. And our imperfection, in my opinion, is still light years ahead of what else I've
Totally
seen
agree.
out there. So, dude, I appreciate everything. I appreciate you coming on. And
Thank you for having me.
let's take over 2024.
Let's do it.
All right.
Cheers.